The boy's behavior impressed the narrator. He was very much impressed by the behavior, the demeanor of the two boys when they went across the city to show the interesting places. Nicola's smile was steady and engaging. The elder boy's smile was very steady and engaging. So whoever looks at this boy, they would continue talking to him. Hello everyone, this is Shobita S. Aradhya, lecturer, Department of English, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru, the Temple of Excellence. In the last session, we had started the chapter Two Gentlemen of Verona. And in today's session, we will continue and see what happens with the narrator and the two boys. Let us do the recapitulation first, and we'll see that two boys, Nicola and Jacopo, they were selling berries on the outskirts of the city, and they wore old and shabby clothes. They were not looking neat, and narrator buys the biggest basket from the boys, though his driver, he refuses to buy from shabby boys, from the boys who are not that clean, but narrator buys those strawberries from them, that too the biggest basket from the boys. And after that they enter the city of Verona, which had the richness of history. So the streets were the medieval streets, and there was a reputation that Romeo and Juliet lived in this city. We have learnt till here, and in today's session we'll continue with the summary. The next morning, when narrator comes out of his hotel, he comes out of his hotel in the morning and sees that these two boys, Nicola and Jacopo, they were polishing the shoes in the busy square in the city, in the busy circle of the city. So people were coming and going there. These two boys sat and they were polishing the shoes of people who came to them. So they were shining the shoes of the people. The narrator looks at them, and after waiting for a while to slacken down the trade, so many people were going and coming, the narrator waited till that crowd had come down, and then he meets the two boys. Narrator goes to the two boys and meets them, and the boys also welcomes him with a smile. So these boys were very enthusiastic. There was charm in their face. They welcomed the narrator with a great smile. When inquired about their work in the square, the narrator comes across the fact that the two boys did many things for living. It was not only selling the strawberries, they also shined the shoes of the people. Along with that, they did many other jobs. This was known to the narrator when he inquired them in this square. Going further, they also show visitors the places in the city, like the Juliet's tomb. So Juliet's tomb was popular place, the place of interest for the visitors. So these boys did the job of guide also. They took people to these places and showed them, and also told the history about these places. The two boys were asked to show the city by the narrator. The narrator thought, yes, these two boys are very useful. So he calls those boys to show the city to him. And they made rounds in the city, and the narrator's interest was provoked by the demeanor of the boys. Demeanor means here behavior. The boy's behavior impressed the narrator. He was very much impressed by the behavior, the demeanor of the two boys when they went across the city to show the interesting places. They impressed the narrator. Coming up, they were childish and quite artless. They were childish, yes, they were the age of 12 and 13. They were childish and quite artless. They did not wear something very neat, tidy and all. They seemed to be artless. But Jacopo's lips were pale. His lips were pale, but the boy was lively as a squirrel. He was as lively as a squirrel. Only his lips were pale. Why were they pale? Because they work all day and some time of night also. So the continuous work, the exhausting work has made his lips pale, but he was as quick as the squirrel. Nicola's smile was steady and engaging. The elder boy's smile was very steady and engaging. So whoever looks at this boy, they would continue talking to him. So he would engage them through his smile. It was also very steady. He never made his face frowning one. He always smiled. These boys' faces were serious and air of purpose far beyond their years. Though they were small, though they were children, their faces were very serious, and also there was an air of purpose far beyond their age. So they were very young, but their seriousness, their purpose of life was far beyond their age. So they were behaving like an adult. So that maturity, that growth was there to these boys intellectually. As the boys proved extremely useful, the narrator met them many times in the week that followed. The narrator stayed there for a week or more. At that time, the narrator felt that these boys are very useful. So he met them many times. Again and again, the boys were helping the narrator in the city. Nicola and Jacopo are the boys whom the narrator could rely on. So for any work, like some errands means here and there small works like getting American cigarettes, opera, or a good restaurant for ravioli. Ravioli is a kind of pasta which is filled. Filling is done. That dish is called as ravioli. Whenever the narrator wanted an American cigarette, or he wanted to watch an opera, or have to go for a good restaurant for ravioli, his favorite dish, it was the two boys whom he relied on. The narrator was struck to see the boys unremittingly working in the summer days. So unremittingly, they did not have any regret, or they did not curse anybody for their work. Even during the summer days, they did not exhaust, they did not feel the tiredness, they continuously worked. They shined shoes. So these are the works done by the boys. They shined shoes, sold fruits, hawked newspapers. They hawked the newspapers and conducted tourists round the town and ran errands. So other small, which cannot be named or listed, such small things as if the narrator wanted the American cigarette, or he wanted to know where the opera will be conducted, all those informations, all those errands were done by these two boys. Exploited every avenue which the troubled economy of the town left open to them. So they searched for the works. Wherever they could get some income, these boys were ready to work there. So they exploited the areas from where they could get the economy. So this is how the boys were. So only the narrator liked their demeanor. One night, the narrator meets the boys near a deserted square. So deserted square means where there are no human activities, where there are no people seen. So in such a deserted square, the narrator meets these two boys, that too night time. Nicola sat upright on the pavement with fatigue face. Nicola was fatigued, he was tired. He was sitting straight on the pavement and with the unsold bundle of newspapers. He was having a bundle of newspapers which he wanted to sell to the people. So with those bundle of newspapers, he was sitting on the pavement, and Nicola asleep pillowing his brother's shoulder. Nicola was asleep on his brother's shoulder. So this was seen by the narrator. Definitely anybody who sees such young children sitting in that condition will have pity for them. So the narrator also had pity for them. He inquired the boys, and Nicola was not as sharp as he used to be. So earlier we saw that they were as fast as squirrel and always life-filled eyes, always active. But here Nicola, he was not as sharp as he used to be. That shows he was very tired. He replied he was waiting for the last bus from Padua to sell newspaper. So he was waiting for a bus to arrive at this junction to sell the newspapers to the travelers. So he replies that to the narrator. The narrator asks if it was so important, both of them, to be so hard as they looked tired. The narrator inquires, you look so tired. Why do you work so hard? You are too young to do all this work. Why do you do all these works? These kind of questions were asked by the narrator. The boy says, we are not complaining, sir. So they do not regret for their condition, why they are working. They are happily doing all those work. Though they get tired, they happily do that work. So the boys reply that we are not complaining about our conditions, about our life. Nicola's tone was polite yet discouraging further inquiry. So here the boys, especially Nicola, he avoids the narrator asking few more questions. He does not want to tell the narrator or reveal the narrator something. So to avoid, he discourages further inquiry from the narrator. The next morning, while the narrator getting his shoes shined, asked the boys, you both work hard, so hard, and earn money. Yes, if they are doing so many jobs, definitely they will earn some money. But you do not seem to use any money on clothes. You eat little. So the narrator tells, you earn so much of money, but I did not see you using that money. You do not buy clothes also. You are wearing the same cloth, and also you eat very little. That too, what they eat? They eat black bread and figs. The cost is very less for these two. So when you are eating all this and you are not buying any clothes also, why do you need that much of money? Or what do you do with your money? Where is the money going if you are not spending it on yourselves? This was the question asked by the narrator. What the boys will answer? Let us see. Nicola colored deeply under sunburn, then grew pale, and he started gazing at the ground. So he grew pale. He became sad. His sunburned skin did not have charm when he faced this question from the narrator. And he started gazing at the ground. His eyes, his contact of eyes, they fell on the ground. He was not able to have the eye contact with the narrator. You must be saving money to emigrate to America, the narrator asks. He asks, oh, I think you are saving money to emigrate to America. You want to fly to America. Nicola expressed a desire to go to the States, but said they had plans in Italy at the moment. Yes, we have the plans. We wish we could go to States, but now our plans are here in Italy. Only this much was said by the boys. But Nicola did not reveal the plan. What was the plan? They said, we have plans in Italy. What was that plan? That was not revealed. Narrator informs the boys that he will be leaving by Monday. And is there anything he could do to these boys? So the narrator informs that by Monday I will be leaving. I will be returning back to my place. And is there anything that I could do for you before I leave this place? That is Verona, the city of Verona. Nicola shook his head, but Jacopo quickly requests the narrator to drop them to their village, Poleta. So Nicola is the elder one. He shook his head, saying, no, we don't need anything. But Jacopo was the younger one, he had some desires. So he expresses his desire and he requests that, can you drop us to our village in your car? Nicola was glaring at Jacopo in vexation. Nicola was angry on his brother now because he did not want to take anybody to their village. Jacopo was the child. He had some desires to travel in car. Every time they used to catch a bus and go to their village. This time Jacopo thought, why can't we ask help from the narrator? He is so kind. But Nicola, he was glaring at Jacopo with vexation, with disappointment. The next afternoon, they drove to the tiny picturesque village set high upon the hillside amidst the sheltering chestnut groves with a few pines on the upper slopes and deep blue lake beneath. So, there was a problem with the narrator because the narrator had already informed the driver not to come the next day. So, narrator decides that, and he also tells the boys that, okay, tomorrow there won't be driver, but I myself will drive you to your village. And as they had planned, by afternoon, the next afternoon, they started their journey to the village Poleta, and it is a tiny picturesque village. As we see in the sceneries, it was a beautiful village, and it was set high upon the hillside. It was on the high hillside amidst the sheltering chestnut groves. The bushy plants were there and a few pines. Pines are the trees which grow very high. And upper slopes and deep. Pines were on the upper slopes and deep there was the blue lake flowing. So this is about the village Poleta where narrator drives them or drops them. What happens there? Jacopo directed the narrator to a large red-roofed villa. So, Jacopo, he gives the directions and finally they reach a red-roofed villa. By seeing the villa, the narrator was surprised. Surrounded by high stone wall. The villa was surrounded by the high stone wall and the two boys jumped out telling the narrator that they would be back in an hour. So they did not call or invite the narrator to their home or where they were going. They jumped out of the car as they reached their place and they said they'll be back in an hour. So now narrator should wait for these boys to return. The narrator silently follows the boys. What he does is, first he waits for the boys to move. When they move, silently the narrator follows the boys and he finds a nurse to open the door. So when he follows the boys, they entered a house behind the red-roofed villa. There he finds a nurse opening the door. He knocks the door where the boys went in and he finds a nurse opening the door for him. When asked about the boys, the nurse led him to a cubicle. So a box kind of room, to a cubicle where he saw two boys talking to a girl of about 20 years. So they passed through a passage and when they went there, it was a cubicle where these two boys were sitting next to a girl who was about 20 years. So the girl was on the bed and these two boys were sitting in front of her and very happily they were discussing. The nurse informs that these boys had lost their mother earlier and during the war, Second World War, they lost their father too. So by looking at the face of the girl, narrator gets to know that she is their sister. So their faces were resembling. So the narrator gets to know that she is their sister. I had told you the characters, Lucia, sister of Nicola and Jacopo. This was the girl who was in the hospital, who was hospitalized for her treatment for the disease of tuberculosis in spine. Here the nurse informs. The nurse wanted to keep it a secret, but when the narrator asked her, and she finds this narrator a kind person. She tells all about these two boys, that they had lost their mother when they were too young, and they lost their father also during the Second World War. So the bombing had destroyed their house. He had been a well-known singer. Who had been a well-known singer? Father of these two kids was a well-known singer, and the bomb destroyed their house. That made these boys shelterless. Not only the boys, their sister Lucia. So these three became orphan after their parents' death, and they were also shelterless. Their home was completely destroyed during the bombing. The children who had always known a comfortable and cultured life till their father was alive, they knew the comfortable and cultured life. But after their father's death, they suffered from lack of food and they suffered from cold. So they were homeless, shelterless, nothing was left in the house. They did not have their parents to complain about their situation. So they became shelterless, and also they did not get proper food to eat. They suffered in the cold. Germans ruled for 3 years, and the boys started hating Germans. So Germans captured their place and they ruled for 3 years. For all these years, the children, the two boys, they started hating the Germans because their rule was not the pleasant one. They saw many problems and they also suffered. So they started hating the Germans, and there was a resistance movement began against the Germans, and at that time these two boys were the first to join that resistance movement. It was against the Germans. Once the war was over, the boys returned to their sister. So during this war, the resistance movement, these boys, they did not live or stay in their place. They went somewhere, hid themselves, and they were helping these resistant movement people. As they were hawking the newspaper, with that they distributed the pamphlets or the handbills to the people who involved in the movement. So once the movement got over, once they were independent, these boys, they came back and reunited with their sister. So Lucia had earlier been trained as a singer. She was getting a training by her father as a singer, but she developed tuberculosis of spine. So she suffered from the disease of tuberculosis in her spine. So this was known to the boys now, and it was the responsibility of the boys to take care of their sister. The boys did not give up. They did not give up. What they did, instead brought her to the hospital 12 months ago. Since 12 months, these boys are paying the hospital charges. That too for the tuberculosis of spine. The expense will be more. That is why these two boys were working day and night continuously, doing different jobs. They earned the money, and that money was not used by these boys. They gave it to the hospital. How they gave? They never missed the paying the bill. They paid it in the right time. So because of that, Lucia was making good progress in the hospital since the 12 months. And narrator, after listening all this, he goes back to his car and he waits for the boys. The boys did not know that narrator had come here, and the nurse has explained their situation. So the narrator silently goes back to the car. He sits as if he was waiting for the boys there, and they start their journey, return journey to the city of Verona. While driving back, there was silence. No one spoke a word. Why they did not speak? The narrator, he wanted to keep the secret, because the boys tried to keep the secret in them. The narrator also tried to do the same because he did not want to hurt these two boys. So what happened? No one spoke a single word. There was complete silence in the car. The boys were recalling what they spoke to their sister. So they did not want to talk. War had broken their spirits. The war, the Second World War, might have broken their spirits. Their selfless action brought a new nobility to human life. So, a selfless activity, what they did, action, what they did, has brought a nobility to human life. So, this we have to learn. How these two boys went on doing so many jobs for their sister. So, the relationship, the love, the sacrifice for the family members, all these has to be learnt by everyone in the society. So, every human has to learn the nobility what these two boys are teaching, and gave promises of greater hope for the human society. Their work, their action has given a new hope to the human society. So, we need to learn from these boys how we should take care of our family members, how we have to be with the member who is in a trouble. It is not that like if one is suffering at home, the other leaves them in the same condition and enjoys his comfort zone. So, if one member of the family has a problem, the other has to give his shoulder in such conditions. So, this was about the two gentlemen of Verona. Now, quickly let us see some question and answers. Short type questions. List the different things that the boys did to earn their living. They used to polish the shoes, they sold fruits, they hawked newspapers, they took visitors to show the places. These are the different jobs done by the two boys. In spite of earning money, why did the boys look poor? Because they were earning money for the treatment of their sister. They did not spend the money for themselves. What characters in the two boys attracted the narrator? So, one is selfless action, sacrifice, love for the family members, and the spirit they had. So, these are the characters of these two boys which attracted the narrator. Why did the two boys go to Poleta? They went there to meet their sister and to pay the hospital bills. Why did they want the narrator not to follow them? Why? Narrator is a stranger. So, these boys did not want to tell their story, tell their suffering to everyone. To avoid that, the boys did not allow the narrator to follow them. Why didn't the narrator follow the boys? Okay, boys did not allow him. Why the narrator did not follow? Because he followed, but he did not tell the boys he followed, because he understood why these boys were not revealing that. So, he left them to keep their secret, though he knew what is the secret. What had made the two boys and their sister homeless? The bombing on the city, it destroyed their home, and also father was killed in that bombing. Why didn't the narrator speak to the boys on their return journey? Why the boys were recalling what they spoke to their sister? Why did the narrator stop talking? Why he did not speak? Because he wanted these boys to enjoy recalling their conversation with their sister. So, these are the short type questions. Next, we have long answer type questions. First one, in what different ways were the boys useful to the narrator? So, what all they did? They brought him American cigarette, they took him to the opera, and they also took him to the good restaurant where he could get ravioli. They shined his shoes. Okay, so all these work was done by these two kids to the narrator. What do you understand about the boys' character from their action and behavior? What is their character? They are very humble, enthusiastic. They are working for their sister. They are sacrificing their childhood for their sister. So all these we learn. Why were the boys evasive in disclosing their plan to the narrator in the story? So anyhow, the narrator was a stranger. Many people come and go. These boys were showing places to many visitors. Narrator was one of the visitors. So the boys did not like to disclose what their suffering is. Appearances are deceptive. How does the story bring out this idea? So based on the appearance of anybody, we can't judge them. They will be something else. So to judge somebody, we need to spend some time with them. Only their appearance could not tell you what they are. So this you have to explain in these questions. So what conclusion we can get from this chapter is, the story is about how two sincere and selfless young boys face hardship and for the treatment of their sister suffering from tuberculosis. Their main aim was to cure their sister from tuberculosis. For that they went through many hardships. So that we'll see here, and how sincere and selfless they were in attaining this. That we'll learn here. It conveys a message that as long as people are willing to make sacrifices for their well-being of others, there is hope of humanity. So till when can we have the hope of humanity? Until there are people who make sacrifices for the well-being of others, well-being of their dear ones, loved ones. So until they are sacrificing, we can have hope on humanity. So this is the conclusion we get from this chapter. And in the next session, we will discuss on an interesting narration by K.P. Purnachandra Tejasvi in the chapter Around a Medicinal Creeper. This is going to be very interesting. We'll discuss that in the next session. And until then, take care. Bye-bye and thank you.